Welcome to Discover Indie Film. I'm your host, Jeff Howard, and I've got filmmaker Shannon Gibbs with me. Hey, Shannon.
Hello.
Hey, we are in person, which is fun. It's way better than Zoom. So now audio quality problems are my fault, not Zoom's fault. I got it, I kind of like blaming Zoom. But Shannon is here to talk about her film, My Own, which was at Sherman Oaks Film Festival last November in 2021. I can still remember what year it is. And I actually did my research. It was the LA premiere, right?
It was, yeah.
Which premieres don't matter, but it's really still kind of cool to
mattered.
premiere a film that cool.
Mattered in my heart.
Yeah. And it won the Programmer's Prize.
Yes.
Which means it's an awesome film, and it had to get a prize. Thank
you, Jeff.
it keeps, and it also means that, like, I'll give this away. The Programmer's Prize is a prize that I personally give because if I see a film come in second, like in several categories, and I'm like, first curse of the podcast, motherfucker, this film needs something. So instead of me putting my finger on the scale and changing an award for that person who is not getting what I think they deserve, I can just give them the Programmer's Prize. And then everyone's happy.
Amazing. Well, thank you for that.
Or at least I'm happy. It keeps me happy.
Well, it made us very happy too. So thank you.
Oh, well, that's very nice. That makes me feel really good.
Yeah.
So what am I supposed to say? Oh, I didn't ask you this before we started. Is it going to join the TV series?
Yeah, it is.
Yes. Excellent.
We're so excited. So we're doing our last festival in Waco, Texas, which is very exciting because what's going on with Texas and trans people is abhorrent. And we are screening at the end of July at Deep in the Heart Film Festival, and then we're distributing with you guys.
That's awesome. So therefore, I shall mention that people should go to Amazon Prime Video and search for Discover Indie Film and enjoy the TV series that is films handpicked from the festival circuit. It's all shorts. Every season's 10 episodes, about a half an hour per episode, although it varies. And it's just the best of the best. Used to be free included with Prime. Now Amazon makes us charge everyone. So it's $99. It's only $7.99 for 10 episodes. So think about it that way. Like you're getting 25 films for $8.
Yeah.
Right. And you're watching stuff that people made from their own hearts.
I like to kind of like act like my own parent when I was in high school and be like, well, I can spend this money and if my parents don't notice, I'll get away with it. And so now it's like, if I spend this money and I don't notice, I got away with it.
100%. Totally agree.
You won't even notice. See if you notice. You probably won't.
Right. Well, this is awesome. So My Own, which is a wonderful, really powerful, really love that film, powerful film, will be in season 6. And I can't tell anyone when season 6 is coming because I just have to get my ass in gear and get the other. I think there's about 4 or 5 films that I approach for season 5 that are going to be in season 6. So I got to just get like 15, 20 more. You know, I got to work the email.
Yeah.
But we'll get together another amazing, honestly, I shouldn't say this, but like each season's getting better because the festivals are getting bigger. I mean, the festival you were in was 8 days.
Yeah.
8 days of films.
Yeah.
So that should like give me a good 2 seasons.
Yeah, and I mean, the quality is just incredible. I had the privilege of being a jury member or a board member.
You were on the Filmmakers Board for Film Invasion.
I was on
just last month.
Filmmakers Board, and the quality was superb. It's really inspiring to watch other people who are doing what I'm trying to do at the highest level. Yeah,
it's. I really appreciate that. I appreciate filmmakers like you who come when the festival says, "Hey, do you want to join this board?" And you say yes, and then you really watch the films. It's so. I think that's exactly the kind of filmmaker who's going somewhere because the people who only care about their own work, like how well can their work develop?
Yeah, if you haven't watched the genre, how can you write towards it?
For sure. All right, well, we're already having a wonderful chat, but now we'll go back in time, and I will ask you the question that I always do for this podcast, because it really is fascinating to me, like what brings people to film, and at the level where you wrote and starred in your film and produced it, right? So
yeah, I was associate producer. Yeah, we had a producer on the team, but I definitely was working towards crowdfunding and putting together the whole plan to make it happen.
yeah, you may not have given yourself the title, but I'm sure you were the driving force behind it.
Exactly. It was my brainchild.
Absolutely. And such a powerful film. So before you tell me the history of that film, which is like what we would have talked about at the Q&A at the festival, this is about you as a filmmaker. So what got you into the film thing?
Yeah, so for as long as I can remember, I've been obsessed with telling stories. My sister is a pro tennis player, and, I was always at tennis tournaments growing up, and I would be in the corner writing stories about aliens and other worlds and things and putting together performances for people to watch after the match, either in celebration or as a pick-me-up. And yeah, I was told I was kind of bossy in first grade. That was like a check that you could get on the report card, was like on a score of like 1 to 5, how bossy you are. And like, it's a 5, which I'm sort of just like, is that misogynistic? Or like, it's something.
Well, you would have to look at the rest of the class, but it definitely, in first grade, labeling someone as bossy sounds like a gender bias to me. Yeah,
exactly. And it was just because I was always trying to kind of lead things. I remember we would be playing Legos, and there would be structural organizational issues that I'd call out, and I would be the one to like come forward with a plan and delegate tasks. And,
so you were already producing, actually.
Yeah,
that's
definitely.
And by the way, let me jump in. Older or younger sibling?
Younger.
You're the younger?
Yeah.
See, the younger is always cooler. And yeah, I'm the younger of two myself. So
yeah, I absorbed a lot of energies growing up. I think I was a mediator and kind of a community leader in my family situation, I would say. Because my sister was sort of like the soldier. She was going out there playing these grotesquely badass tennis tournaments, and I was kind of managing the vibes.
And what part of the country were you growing up in?
Cleveland, Ohio.
Cleveland.
Yeah.
I had a good friend from Cleveland. I hear it's wonderful.
Yeah, I grew up in Shaker Heights. Like Kid Cudi grew up in Shaker Heights too. Cleveland is the reason. But on the playground in Cleveland, I tried to direct Harry Potter in second grade.
Right, so you went from writing stories to then you already were seeing it as a visual medium.
Definitely, yeah. I really liked the idea of embodying it, and I wasn't quite sure how to get from A to B, and I think that is a process that stumps even adults. But I was always very willing to try to figure out with a team how to get from A to B. So even if we didn't know how we would get to B, it was like, okay, let's start trying stuff. And so, that's how I was with Harry Potter on the playground. In retrospect, I was devising theater. I was like, let's improvise for a while, and I'll write down the best thing you say, and then we'll take it back.
That's how so many great things are made today.
Yeah.
And it's not like, I assume you did not see on TV, like, this is how Curb Your Enthusiasm is done, or this is how, the Christopher Guest movies are done. Like, you were making Christopher Guest movies. You were using that philosophy in first grade, you're saying?
Yeah, first or second grade, something like that on the playground. But yeah, I remember being very frustrated with my team. Nobody seemed to be quite as committed as I was. I always had this vision, and it was just like, if I could just get like my players, on board to the extent that I'm on board. And that's probably where the bossy came from.
Yeah. And you were on the creative side. Were you also interested in performing?
Definitely. I was forced to go to theater camp, I believe, when I was 7. And I was really shy. I was a really shy kid. I was always a really strange combination of like an introvert and an extrovert, sort of needing people to come out of my shell and getting my energy that way, but being really, really, really shy at first, to the point where like I needed somebody to walk me to the bathroom, and I would get nervous about asking to go to the bathroom, to the point where I'd like pee myself in kindergarten. But theater was that catalyst for me to go from my immediate shy self to that crazy out of the box performative person. And so, yeah, I joined a theater summer camp because my mom wanted me to. And by the end, it was my thing. A director told me I had moxie, and I was sold.
It's so important to get something positive from a non-parent figure, right?
Exactly. That was the first sort of performative compliment from an adult figure in my life. This guy, I can't even remember what his name was, but I performed a dance to Britney Spears that I choreographed. And after the performance, he came up to my mom and said that kid has moxie. And I was like, that's it. This is my calling.
For sure. I mean, that took major courage.
Yeah, I think I was like, it sort of reminds me of like the scene in Little Miss Sunshine, like that like very shy girl who just has this capacity to just, completely rock out in the right context. That's me.
For sure. And I just showed my age and ignorance because when you said Britney Spears, I actually pictured the cute little innocent Britney. I didn't realize, you were probably doing like anyway, there were a lot of sides to Britney. No, it was early
2000. I think it was to Oops, I Did It Again. So, I mean, Britney Spears
that was big time.
Oh, okay. What were you thinking? You were thinking like...
it wasn't, when you mentioned Little Miss Sunshine, like the inappropriateness of the kids' dance.
Yes, definitely. It had that sort of comedy to it, too.
Yeah. It was like...
of like, I had no shame.
Yeah. Like, I'm not trying to be sexy. It's not intended to be sexy. Yeah. But this is what grown-ups do when they're trying to be sexy.
Right. It was like kind of a mocking of what I knew, like the kind of performative person I knew, which when I was growing up was, like Oops, I Did It Again, Britney, and I really loved Avril Lavigne and Pink.
Sure. Great artists.
Yeah.
All right. So, and theater camp, it's funny. I'm hearing about parents who were very into getting their kids active in things. So after theater camp lead to like plays at school and stuff?
Yeah. I basically couldn't go more than a few months without a play. Basically, ever since that camp, I have been obsessed with like, okay, what's next? And that's even in my professional filmmaking career, it's been that same energy, even though it's much more difficult now to say what's next. That's still my energy. I just need it to survive. So it's like, what's next? Right.
So you were always staying active in it, and were you always writing too?
Yeah. So I had this teacher in middle school, Mr. Levy, and our middle school drama program didn't have much funding, so Mr. Levy wrote all the plays. And that was such a gift because Mr. Levy, he would workshop his scripts with us. He was not trying to be Shakespeare. He was not trying to be perfect. He was trying to put something up that resonated with his audience. And he really cared about whether it resonated with sixth graders. He was writing towards sixth graders. And that really inspired me. And in eighth grade, he encouraged us, or actually at the end of each year, he encouraged us to write our own scenes, our own comedy sketches, our own monologues, basically whatever came to mind, and just put them up and sort of self-direct them and just put stuff up to see what sticks and just not to be afraid of that.
That's actually a remarkable drama teacher because I knew of many drama teachers who were just trying to live out their dreams, maybe because it was LA. But the idea that he wasn't just putting you all in molds that he had in mind, but he was actually really encouraging creativity. And
he was being remarkably vulnerable too, showing us drafts before it was finished. Like, how do you think this should end?
Yeah, and giving you input. My God,
and empowering us that we could be right as sixth graders about how it should end.
I recently heard an expert on childhood development say that the most important thing parents and or adults can do for kids is make sure they know they matter. Right? Because most of the time, even if you say, oh, you're wonderful, or you give them compliments, but if they don't know that they matter and that their voices matter, like it just really... it's just really beneficial for a human being.
And just this thought that, I don't know if it was Mr. Levy who said it exactly, but I remember it just sort of being percolating in me in that middle school time, this idea that even if it feels unoriginal to me, people aren't in my head. So if you share it, there's actually probably something very unique about it. So don't undermine yourself like that.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's a wonderful lesson.
Yeah.
All right, so that was middle school, I assume. And then you just carried it on through high school?
Yeah, and then I went to art school that my dad taught at, sort of art school. It was sort of like hippy-dippy Hollywood school, Crossroads in Santa Monica.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Oh, so you moved out to L.A.
Yeah, okay, so we moved out to L.A. and I went to Manhattan Beach Middle School. So I went to public school, and that's where I met Mr.
So
Levy.
Cleveland was up through elementary and then middle school.
Yeah, so I
here.
kind of have equal claims to LA and Cleveland, and I think that my voice is kind of a reflection of that. Like I kind of sound like Midwestern, but with vocal fry.
I love that.
But yeah, and so then I went to Crossroads, and I went really hardcore into theater, probably too hardcore. People were a little tough on me at first. I think I told somebody like in an introduction that it was like Shannon Gibbs, theater kid, and that haunted me my entire freshman year.
Especially in that, for those who don't know, I'll just share, like, if you were my age, Crossroads was known, that's where like Jack Black went.
Yeah,
and
there was
Goldie Hawn's kids and like all the... It was like a heavy-duty Hollywood.
It was very, and because of that, it was very, like, too cool for school. Like, you had to be cool about things. Like, even if you were excited about them, it was like, oh, I might be in my dad's movie next year. We'll see.
Yeah, so you hadn't heard of my shitty high private school that I went to in Van Nuys, right? When I named it. Yeah, because it went bankrupt probably before your time. But we played Crossroads in sports.
Oh.
So it was always funny to like go to the Crossroads gym for a basketball game and like see the famous people and go, yeah. I mean, we actually had, the Valley entertainment kids, but that just meant that like people's parents were like producers and cinematographers and stuff. And
yeah, we had the glitzy names for sure.
Big names, yeah.
Yeah.
So being a theater kid at Crossroads was like...
It kind of felt like a big deal, and I was naively very, very excited about it, too excited about it. And then I had to roll that back a little bit for the next couple of years. But I did continue to do theater. And actually, my freshman year, I didn't make both plays because it was extremely competitive there. And I played tennis. Basically, I played tennis whenever I didn't make the play was my thing.
I'll share, as long as we're bonding over this stuff. I had to quit the play my senior year because it was during tennis season, and the drama teacher expected me to go do a 4-hour tennis practice, run home, eat dinner, and then go to the play rehearsal. And I was like, dude, I actually want some time to watch TV at night, so goodbye.
Yeah, I did that all of middle school. I would go from 2-3 hours of tennis straight over to rehearsal. And I've quit tennis like maybe 6 times in my life, and I'm coaching it currently, so I'm in an on section. But I remember when I quit tennis for the first time, which was I think my sophomore year in high school, because I made the play. I just felt like a superhero. I was like, I have all this energy for acting now. Like, oh my God, I show up and I just go. I was so tired before, and I was doing a lot of musical theater, and I literally could sing better when I hadn't just come from 3 hours of tennis.
I think it's a huge thing when a kid learns that they have the right to quit something.
Yeah, that was a big deal because it was definitely not suggested in my family to quit tennis. It was, when I first came up with the idea, you would have thought my family was having an intervention with me, and my out-of-town relatives were calling in saying, have you considered this? Have you considered that? You could go to college for free. Don't give away your potential. It was a lot.
That's a lot, yeah. So you must have had you have a lot of internal strength to have quit with that much in opposition to the choice. But I just think it's so liberating. When I was a kid, I think it was a basketball team that I was like miserable on.
Yeah.
And actually I just used a knee injury and then I didn't go back. But I was like, oh my God, it felt so good to stop.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I used that moxie and I quit, even though everyone was telling me not to. And it's still sort of a complicated thing in my life because art is so subjective. And tennis is very objective. What are you ranked? Are you one of the best people ever? Great, And I've always been fighting against this feeling of I am objectively very talented at tennis, quite reluctantly, but because I played, many hours a day, every day a week growing up with my father, who also created a pro tennis player. So it's always been this sort of tug of like, and I always had this feeling like if I was able to commit as much time, those 10,000 hours to acting and writing and art as I did to tennis, that maybe I could actually get as good at art as tennis in some objective way. But it's always a struggle because art is so subjective. And then, of course, I was recently in Jackass 4.5 and got my SAG eligibility hitting 100-mile-per-hour tennis serves into the cast members' crotches. And I'm like, it's complicated because I use this thing that I'm objectively very good at towards a goal that hopefully eventually will get me out of tennis.
Yeah, and believe me, we're going to do a deep dive on that because I believe chronologically that'll probably be the last thing because that was even post Sherman Oaks Film Festival, I assume. Or did you shoot it earlier?
I think I shot it before. Yeah.
Before, all right.
Yeah.
Well, we can, but obviously you're talking to somebody who loves tennis and loves film, and I happen to be one of those goofballs who thinks that Jackass is a little closer to performance art than most people give it credit.
I agree. I thought there was a lot of art there. And when I was on set, the people doing that were very artful. There were camera angles to make things look epic, For sure. But before we dive into that, we're still at crossroads. Yeah.
So the high school years, you eventually, so every time you were cast in a play, you said goodbye to the Crossroads tennis team, essentially?
Yeah. There was actually one time randomly my freshman year I played fall tennis because I didn't get into the touring production of Pippin because they were only casting like 2 freshmen that year. It was a very competitive class. And then that spring I played my 1 semester of high school softball, right field. Which funny enough.
So when you saw lefty batter, you're like, okay, I guess you got to pay attention.
Yeah. Let's buckle up. I was a good hitter though. I had the hand eye. I was about to say
because you're used to the racket.
Yeah.
2-handed backhand. You probably could have played switch, but
I could go
switch.
either way.
Yeah.
It's true. And actually, that came back around. I've been playing in an adult co-ed softball league, and I've been pitching actually and playing second and. I've been going to the batting cages. I'm very proud of the fact I'm able to hit an 80-mile-per-hour fast pitch in the cages.
Sure, yeah.
Well, right, because I just can watch the ball, like the speed doesn't bother me.
I'm laughing silently because I'm dying to start talking about eyes on the ball and stuff and my struggles in my family to try to get people to understand if you saw it hit the net, you didn't see it hit your strings, but I'll shut up. We're not going to discuss tennis. It's not your love.
That's very real though. And I relate with the imagery. Yes.
That said,
yeah.
So high school,
so by my sophomore year, I was in the plays, and
which means you were damn good.
Oh yeah. It was very fun. I'm trying to remember what we did. We did Fame the musical, and I was the dance teacher who believed that Tyrone didn't have to be good at school, and he just really needed to focus on his art, and that's all he needed to do. And I had a teacher's argument with the girl who would become my best friend for all of high school, and she played the English teacher who said that he'll have no opportunities at all if he doesn't learn normal school. It was sort of interesting and in a weird way mimicked some arguments in my house growing up about my sister and how important school was or wasn't for my sister, who was quickly, she's been playing on the Pro Tour since she was 14.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But she was always both. She was always
but yeah,
there was
a you're not going to have to get a job because your job is going to be to earn money on the court.
Yeah, and it was like a strange combination of things because she wasn't allowed to quit school, which basically everybody else at her level had quit school. But my sister would go to Crossroads for half days and then leave at the arts block and then play for 4 hours and rinse, repeat.
And that was because your family believed in education.
Yeah. Well, and she ended up skipping a year so that she would have a year off before she could decide whether to go to college or not or go pro. But by the time she hit 17, she was having an off year on the tour. And so she just ended up going to Stanford at 17, like a whiz. But then she won the NCAA 3 times in a row. And then she dropped out of Stanford and went pro.
Yeah, I'm just going to betray that I have knowledge of this. Like also Stanford, so you're all smart cookies too, because Stanford doesn't give athletic scholarships to people who wouldn't get into Stanford without the sports.
Totally, yeah. She had to get a certain very high SAT score to be considered.
So I think the technical term is she was smart as fuck.
Yeah, for sure.
And an amazing tennis player.
Yeah, we were always different kinds of smart. Like I won the English award at my high school and I was a very good writer. And my sister was an econ major at Stanford, so she had that kind of discipline.
But we're not here to talk about your sister.
Yes.
Definitely about you.
Yeah. So, and I joined the Crossroads Drama Conservatory my junior and senior year. I was in 12 Angry Men. I played, I think it was juror number 10. I had a very long, very racist rant in it, which was complicated. But, I mean, the perspective of the script obviously was not that. But to play a villain, it was my first time playing a villain and realizing that might be a good fit for me. I've played a lot of villains since then. And
interesting that in that era, I won't bother asking what year it was. Probably wasn't that long ago.
2013.
Damn, that was recent. But it's interesting to me that so they were casting without gender concerns, right? But they still are calling it 12 Angry Men instead of like 12 Angry People.
Okay, so it was actually my first experience in drag. We had a director whose vision was to do gender blind, sex blind casting, but make it all men. So we had biological men playing next to women in drag.
Interesting.
Yeah. So they bound me and did like men's makeup on me.
Bound as in like strap the boobs down?
Yeah, strap the boobs down.
Damn.
Yeah.
I guess interesting that they didn't just choose to just cast it that you could have men and women on. I guess they were being loyal to the source material.
I think it was a loyalty to the source material, and it was a feeling that this was a play about men, and it didn't mean that female actors couldn't participate. But
I guess that's as fair as men playing women at Shakespeare's era, right? Mm-hmm. I guess that's maybe how they saw it.
Yeah, maybe some of that. And I think that he thought it would be, it's all educational when you're teaching high school. And he thought, wow, what a cool experience for people assigned female at birth to really do a deep dive into masculinity and that special flavor of repression.
Is this the perfect segue to bring up gender identity?
Yeah.
I mean, do you want to bring it up now or you want to bring it up when we get to my own?
And interestingly, I was never even a woman at all. So, yeah, I'm non-binary and I use they, them, and she, her pronouns. They, them preferred because I'm agender, but she, her still accepted because I'm a queen.
And your entire, which you said at the festival, and your film My Own is about a non-binary character, but your entire life you were aware of feeling non-binary, or
I was dysphoric, and I was angsty and dark and twisty, and
there weren't words for it.
When I think about my dysphoria, which is the special trans flavor of gender discomfort, I think about how I had this strange thing with myself that was a little bit dysmorphia adjacent, but didn't feel like what I'd seen on TV about dysmorphia, where I would be unable to stop looking at myself in the mirror for hours at a time, just staring at myself. And as I stared at myself, I would feel more and more like everything about me felt like an alien trying to play dress up as a woman.
Right, like the reflection wasn't you, or
that it was interesting. It was almost a physical manifestation. So my true feeling was I look like an alien wearing makeup. But in retrospect, what it must have meant was I felt like an alien wearing makeup, because I've rolled back the tapes and I've asked my friends, did I look like an alien wearing makeup? And they said, no, you looked like a very pretty, popular girl.
right, because society was assigning a role.
Yeah.
And when do we get to the truth? Like no one's it's a challenge.
I could tell and feel that I was in drag. And I just didn't know how to tell people that.
Presenting female felt like being in drag.
Yes, yeah. And I'm agender, so, it wasn't the trans story of I'm a boy in a girl's body.
Right.
There wasn't a word for it. So the word that came to my head was I'm an alien in a girl's body, and nobody is like me.
Yes, you feel like you're the only person who feels this way because there's no community.
Yeah, there was no community to join. I felt a very strong pull towards the presentation, the gender presentation of a lot of the gay men I was friends with at that time, which was also an interesting, I didn't know how to tell myself. I felt a sense of imposter syndrome, like, Shannon, like, stop comparing yourself to your gay male friends. Like, what's wrong with you? That's inappropriate. But in retrospect, I think that I had certain things in common with their gender presentation, in that I present female, or I'm femme presenting and lean into being femme presenting, but am not female. And there were people, a lot of them assigned male at birth in my life, who were like that. And I would get almost jealous that that was perceived as queerness, whereas with me, it made sense to them, but it didn't make sense to me.
And I assume you lived in a world where, did this stuff ever come up, or was it all inside you?
Pretty much all inside. Yeah.
Yeah, because society, and even now, I think one of society's biggest difficulties is understanding the difference between gender identity and sexual preference, because people cloud that all the time.
Yeah.
Completely separate ball games.
Yes. And, one of the fun things about being non-binary is that kind of no matter what relationship you're in, it is gay. Or even if, it just depends on, it really queers the situation is what I'm saying. Yeah. It really makes things blurry, because I am currently dating a man, but I am not a woman dating a man, but I'm not a man dating a man either. So I would use probably the umbrella term queer to describe it from my end, but he's a cishet man and would use the term straight to describe it from his end. And that's something that we've agreed is fine.
Which sounds healthy.
Yeah.
You're both accepting of each other's perspectives.
Yeah, but bringing it back to my feelings about having something in common with gay men too, was that I felt attracted to, now I would describe it as masculine people. I felt very attracted to masculine people, but kind of in the gay way. And I didn't know how to explain that too without sounding wildly inappropriate, but I felt it very deeply.
Yeah, for sure. And all this was like in high school.
Yeah.
Like when these feelings are waking up in everyone.
Yeah.
And everyone's finding out who they really are.
Yeah, but I just felt like an alien because there weren't any words to describe it.
Yeah, and society didn't even come close to understanding it.
It didn't really give permission or allow for the possibility. If I had expressed any of these feelings, which maybe I did sometimes in roundabout ways, rather than being shut down, or you'll get a lot of like gaslighting, like everyone feels that way in some way. And it's like, are you really trying to listen to what I'm trying to say? Or are you trying to project yourself onto me and tell me that we're both straight. But
it's very hard for a lot of people. A lot of people just think whatever they've seen, whatever they feel is what everyone else does, right? Like whether it's their religion, they think everyone should believe what I believe. Hell, within religious streams, right? They're like, I grew up an atheist Jew, so every Jew I met who was more religious than me was like, well, you're wrong.
I think sometimes people have a belief, a somewhat narcissistic belief, that everybody is like them. And so let's say they have repressed bisexual urges, and they're like, well, everyone has that. And then they choose to have a heterosexual marriage. And it's like, no, we're all like freaking snowflakes. We're individual, and you are the expert on yourself. And that's really what understanding trans identities boils down to, is understanding that nobody knows themselves better than that person.
Yeah. And it could be solid, it could be fluid, it could be anything.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know we still have to get through college and stuff, but like, I still think one of the most powerful things about your film is your lead character just states very clearly, I'm neither.
Yeah.
Like the agendered term you're using is it's not that I might have been born one way, but now I identify, as the opposite gender. It's that neither of these work for me. Yeah. Neither of these fit.
Yeah, I mean, when you're non-binary, a lot of the time people will try to kind of bounce you back and forth between like, oh, I know a lot of tomboys. Like, I know a lot of girls who like to like dig in the mud, or, like, you really still look like a girl. And it's like, that's not what I'm trying to explain. If you see gender on a spectrum from pink to blue, and this is me personally, if you see the spectrum of gender from pink to blue, I'm not purple, I'm fucking yellow. With shades of pink, because I'm a queen.
Exactly. And what can I say? Obviously, I'm highly supportive of it, and I just don't see how that could cause any other human being any problem at all.
Yeah.
For you to be true to yourself.
Yeah. No, I think trans people represent a certain amount of freedom that a lot of people don't want to give to themselves or explore in themselves. And I think that's where a lot of the hate comes from, is an inability to explore it in themselves. Not saying that they're trans even per se, but just an inability to a fear of
There's something that
that
they need to be that they won't let themselves be.
Whatever
and so someone else, whether it's, I really wish it could not be about sex or gender. It could be about whatever.
I wish I had explored singing more. Yeah. They said I was really good,
Yeah.
It all comes up for people when you tell them you're non-binary, and it's really exhausting.
It's they're projecting their unhappiness upon other people because they can't accept. Yeah. If they're lacking happiness, others must also lack it.
And that must be just how the world is. Yeah. And accepting things that don't feel right is part of life. And if it's not, they're fucked. So it is.
100%.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good basis. And so I think we got on this with the 12 Angry Men play, which... and so you were aware of them, but you didn't have words yet.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I was always aware.
Oh, you had the word alien.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. Like, I wasn't really a tomboy. Actually, my sister was a tomboy who's cisgendered. My sister was that sporty girl who wore, like, the backwards cap. And I loved princess dresses, just, like, in a pretty gay way. And I knew that. It was my drag. I would be, like, running around in, like, I loved this golden bell dress. And my hair would always be, like, disheveled. And I would never cross my legs. And that was my gender presentation. And people were like, Shannon, get it under control. And I felt like I really didn't need to.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And that was your whole life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because when you're wearing a bell dress, I'm picturing you much younger.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes people relate trans. One of my favorite, my dad was a philosophy PhD, and so I was born into knowing a lot of different myths. And there's this cave myth where if you've been in a cave your whole life and you've only seen shadow projections, that like becomes reality. So that's like how you explain how a trans person knows they're trans their whole lives, but doesn't say it. Coming out as trans is like turning the other way and sort of realizing what it all meant, and how can you miss something you didn't realize existed.
Yeah. And then trans is getting public support and what's the word for anti-support? Public,
it's in the discourse.
Attack. It's under it has a target on it in a way.
Yeah.
And then agendered persons are stuck between a huge battle at this point.
Yeah, well, I think actually a lot of the time people see my gender as a radical political belief, which is one of my favorites.
Oh, they think you're just making a point.
That I'm really, really, really liberal, which is funny because I'm a moderate Democrat. And sometimes people like can't compute like that I'm going to fight for trans rights until I die, but I'm a moderate Democrat because they're like, no, that's a really liberal take. And I'm like, no, I'm just trans. So I know trans people exist and deserve humanity. I see that they don't get that. And I believe in change from within the system and incremental change. I just believe that we could start inserting some trans rights into that.
You would think we could just use the term human rights.
Right. Exactly.
And stop worrying about the huge spectrum of humans. It's just so clear, or at least it seems clear.
Yeah.
If your head's not up your ass.
Yeah, I think actually before I was able to say that so concretely, political conversations would make me very dysphoric as people would begin circling in on that concept. And I think some part of me could tell that they were seeing me as radical because of how I identify and because of who I am.
So was there a change for you in college? Like when you got out of the crossroads structure, sounded pretty structured.
Yeah.
Then when did you learn the language? When did you learn to drop alien and understand?
Still not in college.
Still not. So
yeah.
In college, you is it fair to say like you still towed the line in a way?
Yeah. In college, I became a really intense feminist, and I started using comedy as a way to get my political points across. And
you ditched tennis entirely, right? You didn't do the tennis scholarship thing?
Actually,
I
had a little blip. I used the tennis, who knows, allegedly used the tennis to help get me into Middlebury. I played 1 year, and then I quit again when I made the play.
You are who you are.
Yeah, it's really a cycle. So yeah, I'm still coaching tennis, waiting to make the play. But yeah, so I played 1 year. It was very fun. And then I sort of remembered that I didn't like tennis, and then I quit, and I was actually in Stupid Fucking Bird, which is an adaptation of The Seagull by Aaron Posner, a Chekhov play. And I played a goth ukulele player, which I think to date was my best typecast of all time. And that taught me a lot about myself. I was like, oh, these are the kind of roles I should be playing. I was very like dark and twisty and philosophical and angsty. But there was a little bit of a comedy of the pathetic there too.
Yeah. But just so I got it right, Middlebury on the tennis team and a theater major.
Yeah.
Which are both 2 time consuming things. So you did the balance whenever you could.
Yeah, and again, when I quit the team, I felt like a superhero.
For sure. And then while you're doing these plays and things, are you still writing on the side, or was there not time for that outlet?
So when I quit the tennis team, I remember I was on the phone with my mom, and she's a worrier. And she was like, what are you going to do with all this time now? And it actually kind of put a fire under my butt. And I do think, to a certain extent, my very high-achieving upbringing has always put a fire under my butt to figure out how to achieve, like I did in tennis, with something fucking else.
Something you enjoy.
Yeah. And I was like, I think I'll start a sketch comedy group. And I started Middlebury College's first sketch comedy group, still around today and thriving. We sell out all our shows, and we did bro-y feminist political satire.
Very cool.
And I was dating a football player at the time. And part of the reason I chose to go to Middlebury is because they had radical feminists with armpit hair, and they had football players. And I wanted a place with both because I felt like on that spectrum, I was somewhere in between.
Right. You didn't want to go to an art school that had no football team.
Yeah, I wanted to hang out with the jocks and hang out with granola people. And Middlebury had both. And actually, Middlebury was always at war with itself because it had both. But I was like the one person who was like, I love the energies here.
Middlebury's back east?
Yeah, it's in Vermont.
Vermont, okay.
Yeah.
For some reason, I'm thinking Boston, but that's
small
just because
liberal
New
arts.
England is...
Do you know what Amherst is?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
wow.
Okay. So like on that list of schools is like number 4 on that list, like of the small NESCAC colleges. Yeah. So, you know, it was extremely academically competitive too. But where was I? I was talking about bro-y feminists.
I kind of want you to share the name of the sketch troupe that still exists.
Actually, I didn't name it. It was actually this guy, Jack Ralph, who wasn't an actor, wasn't a writer, wasn't a director, and was like my bro-y friend who I drank beers with. And we had a place in town called Middlebury Discount Beverages. And so he named the group Middlebury Discount Comedy.
Fair.
Yeah.
It's attached to something in the community.
Yeah, so we called ourselves MDC. But yeah, so we were kind of, at least at first, and you still see echoes of it today, but we were a radical merging of the bro-y jockey culture with the feminist theater kid culture. And I really believed that these two groups had more in common than they thought they did. And there was a comedy that we could hit in between. For sure. And feminist comedy gets to punch up. Yes, exactly. Yeah, I learned a lot about punching up. I wrote one sketch where arguably I punched down, and I learned a lot. I was... From feedback, or like just even being part of it didn't feel feedback. Right? It was the second show we ever did. You know, we weren't seasoned comedy writers, and I had been very upset about struggling to get access to birth control in town. And it lit a feminist flame under my ass of like, you know, why is it that they can just keep this thing that I need to be like a person who isn't chained to my body from me? Why are there so many levels of bureaucracy? And dear God, what if I wasn't so privileged? And so I wrote a sketch called The Abortion Sketch. Which was like about... I still don't hear the punching down part, but... I have regrets. I don't have that many regrets, because, obviously. My God, I mean, I don't even want to bring it up, but access to birth control is on the table, as well as fucking table again. Abortion being off. But yeah, I sort of started to see this like slippery hellscape slope in my mind, and I wrote a sketch in which in Portland, Oregon, in the year 3000, you would get only if you had the right insurance, you could get coat hanger abortions at your local Walgreens. And people felt that portraying that probably deserved a trigger warning, which probably did. Maybe, but I actually... I don't really want to argue with you, but I don't think you were punching down. Some people might have felt it was in poor taste, but you were still fighting power. Definitely. And I did feel that way. And I didn't apologize at the time, but I do think that too many of the beats of the jokes were about women getting hurt. Right. There was a strong joke at the end that I think maybe the whole sketch should have been more about, which was the contrast between, like, what do you want, like a coat hanger abortion to be thrown down a flight of stairs? And then a guy comes in and says, hey, can I have a condom? She pulls out a shotgun, so you think that she's going to kill the guy. She shoots the woman behind the desk, and she throws him the condom and says, take one, they're free. Now, if that energy was more throughout the whole sketch, and maybe if we didn't shoot a woman in the head, it might have been less problematic. But, you know, clearly I'll talk about this, so I don't I don't have deep shame about it, but I do see.
And it was early in your sketch career.
Yeah.
So, it's just a few rewrites away from being perfect, actually.
Exactly. I didn't, I
And
hadn't been
dead
to.
on. I mean, my God.
I hadn't been to an Upright Citizens Brigade class yet.
All right, well, that's coming up.
Yeah.
So the Middlebury years are great. Sounds like.
Yeah, I started to really hit my stride there, and I started doing stand-up comedy, and I also started Middlebury's first stand-up comedy series, and I would MC it, and I started to feel like kind of a local celebrity on campus. Like if they hadn't seen me in the play, they'd seen me in the sketch show, or they'd seen me doing stand-up.
Right, because it's not a huge campus.
Yeah, exactly. It was very, very small, and that was working to our benefit on the comedy scene in general, because there wasn't much to do socially on campus. We quite literally had a captive audience in the middle of bumfuck Vermont. Like everyone was like really stuck in like a mile radius.
Yeah, for sure, because it was a really long car ride if you wanted to see professional stand-up.
Totally. It was at least an hour to Burlington, or 3 hours to Montreal, or 3 hours to Boston. So we really
pretty far north.
Yeah. It was very cold too. So like people didn't really want to like really leave their immediate radius either.
And anything you needed that didn't exist, you started.
Yeah. And I got I got really into exhibitionism during the time when MDC was first starting. We had a series, I think we had like 5 shows in a row with naked sketches, and it got the people in. But I also think, I was thinking about it, I think it was some of my first moments of gender euphoria too.
Right.
Because to be topless as a female presenting person and say fuck it is to sort of say, what's the difference between my nipple and your nipple, which got me pretty jazzed. And in retrospect, it was because I was non-binary and I found a lot of freedom in being topless exactly how I was.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah. And then I was on a play off Broadway.
And it's also feminist to
totally.
actually
it
say,
felt
I'm
radical.
not going to follow these societal rules.
Totally. And and then I was in an off-Broadway play where they asked if somebody would be comfortable with, again, it was a very dark comedic topless scene on Broadway. And
is this like summer break or after college?
It was summer break.
Okay.
Yeah. And I was playing alongside my professor, and I did it because I was comfortable, because I'd had this stretch of nudist exhibitionism, and I was like, all right, let's go with the brand, see where it takes me. And actually, I got into an argument with my director that summer that I would also now call gender dysphoria, in that we were having a dress rehearsal. And so I got in my dress, which was being topless with just a skirt on. And the director told me to put my top back on until we were actually starting the shows. And I was like, why? This is my costume. I said that I was willing to do this because it wasn't a big deal to me. And now you're like sensationalizing it.
Right. He wanted you to cover up during rehearsal.
And then he couldn't even, it was really funny actually, because it was just like this topless young girl seeming person yelling at like a mid-60s man that their nipples weren't sensational. And that was another moment of a sign.
For sure. But also, interesting. So, I just, you triggered me by mentioning men in their 60s, because I have to admit, like, all the people I know who are like 10 years older than me, which puts them in their mid-60s, their gender viewpoints are much more stricter. Like they really do get upset when the molds are broken, I think. Yeah, and I figure once we all die, it's going to be better.
I wasn't able to explain what I think I was trying to explain, which is like, first of all, a woman's body is sensational, and second of all, this isn't a woman's body, and that's part of the reason why I took this job, because it kind of jazzes me up to be topless, just like the guys, because I am other. I couldn't explain that at the time, and actually, I'm sure he would understand now. He has a trans kid.
Well, excellent. Yeah. So that was a summer.
That was a summer. There was another summer.
By the way, doing off Broadway during the summer That kind of kicks ass.
Yeah, well, my school had a program called Potomac Theater Project where they hired student interns, and they would give us, a lot of the time, a few line roles off Broadway, and then we would also crew it up. And so that's when I actually worked professionally as a costumer for the first time, too.
Oh, foundations.
Yeah. And I also worked as a costumer in a way that I wasn't quite aware of. I thought I was just producing, but we just didn't have a costumer in all the MDC shows and all the sketch comedy shows. I was doing art and I was doing costumes, and I was loving that part of producing.
For sure. No, I mean, look at the film festivals all the time. I say, wow, your production designer did a great job. And the director goes, well, that was me.
Yeah, exactly.
Because
So
there's
it
just
goes.
not enough people to wear these hats. So.
Exactly. So as the producer, director, you end up absorbing a lot of things. And I've learned a lot through the years about which one of those things like actually could become a career in and of itself. And for me, that became costuming. And I work as a costumer in the industry too, as well as a writer, director, actor, and producer.
Excellent. All right. Well, you want to wrap college up? Anything left fascinating about college, or?
I met my guy, my boyfriend, Greg. I call him my first disciple in the sketch comedy years. He was like the first guy who I pitched the sketch group to, and he had actually just taken some classes at UCB that summer. So he was the only person who knew what the structure was. And
so he could ape the lessons from
exactly.
from
Which was
UCB
key.
101.
Yeah, he taught us what beats were, what the rule of three was. It was key.
Rule 3, yes and.
And buttons. But yeah, I pitched him on the group, and he was the first guy to be like, all right, 3 times a week, let's go. Which honestly, that sort of comes back to like what I was talking about in like first or second grade. I was like, I felt like I had the spark, but I didn't have the people. And then Greg came into my life and was that person.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's sweet. And I actually remember meeting him at the festival. He's charming young man.
Yeah, he has a little cameo appearance in my own as well.
He does. That's right. He's one of the dancers.
Yeah. We're writing a little something together right now, and I have a pilot in post-production that he's acting in as well. So we continue to be collaborators.
Very cool. So should I just say, so then you finish, you graduate?
Then I graduate.
And you move out?
And I move out with some of my friends from the sketch group.
Right. And you were you're an Angelino anyway. So when you said to your sketch friends, hey, let's go to LA.
Yeah.
Like you could even say you can crash at my parents for a little while.
Exactly. And that's actually what Greg did. He crashed at my sister's. Yeah, because my parents was probably a little too triggering for me. Like, I just didn't want to, like, move in back. So I was like, okay, we'll stay at my sister's for a little bit, get our feet. And Greg started working at Equinox, and I started working as a barista. But our plan was to make a sketch comedy production company, which we did. It was called Real Adult Humans. And that's where, just like the sketch group, we didn't know what we were doing. And we just found out, like, the whole A to B, don't worry about the how, you'll figure it out in trying to get from A to B. So we did that, and that's when we learned we knew how to write sketches, but we knew how to act in them, but we didn't really know how to act for film. We learned how to act for film. We learned how to direct and shot list. We had a DP friend, actually, who was very instrumental in that. I was going to say,
because you said you're starting a sketch thing out here, but you were using cameras.
Yeah. I think we called it feminist sex jokes for the internet. Was like kind of our...
And I pushed us out of college, but now I got to ask, so in college it was all stage, or were you playing with cameras too?
All stage.
All stage. So you didn't really play with that camera.
Yeah. I came out and I was like, all right, let's take this and bring it to film because we're going to LA and the film industry is the thing to do there and we're going to figure it out. And so we did. Our DP friend, Pedro Bitar, taught us how to shot list. And we did a little crowdfund campaign for our first season. My dad's friend, his colleague at Crossroads, actually, David Stewart, helped me get some of my first equipment and the templates for call sheets and sort of taught me how to, what I later realized was ADing. And to budget and line produce and, how expensive food was going to be and things like that. And we put together a season of content, and then we put together 2 more seasons of content. And then I started crowdfunding for my own.
And you were just YouTubing it?
We were YouTubing it, yeah. We were doing pretty well. I think some of our videos, got upwards of 10,000 views.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, actually, our most viewed sketch, I think, was called Let's Make Porn. And it got the most views because it had porn in it.
I wonder what search terms people were using.
Yeah.
Which is hilarious. Why would you look for porn on YouTube?
Well, and if you looked at how long they viewed it for, it was a second and then just absolute drop off. It was hilarious. But, I was continuing to use the sex sells and they don't know I'm not a woman mentality. And it was working for us. Actually, that sketch was written by, or at least the idea was from my boyfriend, Greg. And it was a boyfriend who's this is really important to me and I need you to take it seriously. We have to make some porn. And the girlfriend, who we actually called Lady Dude, still didn't know I was non-binary, but that gave me a lot of gender euphoria to be cast as Lady Dude. I can't think of a better description of my gender identity in retrospect. But Lady Dude was sure, whatever you need, if it's good for the relationship, let's do it. And then he brings out crude drawings of porn and is so I'm I need help with some of the shading. And and it's the joke was that he wanted to make murals of porn and make portraits of porn, right,
and she was ready to turn on the lights and point the camera at us.
Yeah.
I guess it'd be a smartphone at that point, but
yeah. And then I think at the end I get really into it and I make this beautiful mural and then he doesn't like it.
And by the way, you did just make me think of how wonderful it is to take the concept of sexiness away from binary genders and say sexiness can be for everyone. You can be agender, you can be non-binary.
Yeah, and I think
anywhere on the spectrum, you can be a
sketch,
sexual person.
In a weird way, encapsulated that how many ways you could be sexual. This painting is an embodiment of sexuality. This one's an embodiment of sexuality. And there was almost a disconnect at the end. Maybe these people aren't sexually compatible. And this is a metaphor for that. It's interesting.
Very cool. But that was earlier. That wasn't what you shot and put on YouTube.
No, we shot that and put it on. It's called Let's Make Porn.
That is Let's Make Porn. Right.
That was Let's Make Porn.
Right. Murals. But you left off the word murals because it wouldn't have gotten in the clips.
Yeah, and we did other sketches. I directed one. My directing debut was If Childbirth Were Running a Marathon. And it was a sketch that compared how society treats women who don't want to have kids to if society was really judgmental if women didn't want to run a marathon.
Yeah.
Pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah. No, we're talking on June 27th, 2022. And, I have a bunch of friends posting things on Facebook that I'm not bringing up now because I'm not going to derail us, but
contentious. Yes.
But this is a boy. So anyway. Yeah, and I found through doing that I really like to direct in kind of the more subtle but all-encompassing way that your perspective gets told when you direct. I learned from the group that I loved costume design, and I started doing that professionally. I learned from the group that I hated post-production and don't like to touch it. Unless I'm directing, you'll watch cuts, but I'm no editor. Editing is different. Right.
I am no editor is what I learned. Especially, making a person edit footage they act in is a really special form of torture.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, unless
you're no good.
And you're not an absurd narcissist, so it's just not.
And you're already a little dysmorphic and dysphoric from the whole non-binary thing, and you really, really look like an alien by the end, let me tell you.
I bet. Yeah, that's an extra challenge.
Yeah.
All right, so fascinating that there's a thread of comedy throughout your whole life.
Yeah.
Sounds like. And then
I made a drama.
At what point did my own come up?
So
I assume we're getting near it, right?
Yeah, no. So basically, Real Adult Humans sort of ended where my own started. I basically wanted to take those skills and bring it to make something I could see in the film festival circuit. And I had started going to film festivals and exploring that genre. I also had started questioning my own gender identity and wanted to give myself the space to explore that in a serious way for the first time in many years. I'm like, okay, this is a drama about someone who feels like me, and what does that bring up? So now I'm making a drama where I'm expressing who I am and all these feelings, and inviting whatever comes up to come up. And I wrote I had the idea to bring something to the festival circuit, and I was itching to do that because I had done a couple years of YouTube. And although interesting, it was a bit of a dead end, and I didn't want to be an influencer. I wanted to be an artist. And I'd learned a ton, but I just wasn't sure where to take it, and I wanted to take it to a festival. And so I had this idea of writing something more serious, writing something on my own, because Real Adult Humans was all collaborative writing, which again, like I wanted something like more of a calling card for me as an artist. And the idea came to me in the grocery store. And mind you, I still hadn't come out.
Really? So you still privately saw an alien in the mirror.
Yeah.
And verbally, like, the closest you got was when he wrote the character Lady Dude.
Yeah, exactly. I knew I really liked being called Lady Dude. I knew that as a barista, when people were asking me if I was queer, because I seemed queer, and that was also a theme in my life, is just seeming queer. When somebody asked me if I was queer, I was starting to say, well, not really. Like, I was starting to explore the answer not being like an outright no. And I was like, I think what I started saying was I don't really feel that feminine. And I started allowing myself to say that and know that that was a theme in my life, which was interesting because once I came out, I kind of was like, oh, I actually am feminine. I'm just not a woman.
Yeah, which most people couldn't wrap their heads around. And when people are asking you if you're queer, I mean, our culture for I don't know how long equated that term with gay.
Yeah.
When, Lord knows, it's you just drive people crazy with what each everything in the acronym LGBTQ, like people, straight people go, well, why do you need Q if you got L and G?
Yeah.
And it's like, because there's people that that L and G don't fit.
Exactly. We need queer for sure. And so, I think my friend Brian, when I was working at Bulletproof Coffee, asked me what my pronouns were for the first time. And I said something like, I don't really feel that feminine and I'm not sure, but she, her is fine. Started to be what I would say if somebody would ask me that. But like not a lot of people were asking me that. So I could still kind of let it percolate a little bit. But I was in the grocery store one night. I had felt dysphoric recently, and I've felt dysphoric about this my whole life. I'd felt dysphoric about, I would try to describe how I felt more at home in male settings than female settings, and how I was very jealous of the concept of brotherhood and didn't as easily come to the concept of sisterhood. And I think my boss for the barista job at the time said something like, I've never met any girl who doesn't feel that way. And my heart just shattered because I felt so misunderstood. And again, I wasn't a girl, so being called a girl in direct response to trying to explain that I'm not one really started to get the gears turning. Also working as a barista, I had another female boss around the same time tell me that if I wanted to make money, I had to look like money. And I was trying to figure out what that meant. And my mind kept circling around this idea of do I need to present? In retrospect, it was more cis, but at the time I was more feminine.
More money. I mean, the first boss
money?
is just being openly dismissive, maybe unaware, but completely dismissive.
Yeah.
And then that money thing, wow, that's
I was like, what?
That sounds
what
like
does...
isn't that unhealthy thing of equating women with prostitutes?
Yeah. Well, actually, I think she said at one point too, our work is basically like stripping, I think she said, because she was talking about like looking nice while you pour the drinks and stuff. So obviously, like super on the nose, like also as a feminist, that really upset me. But there was also something more fundamental about like, I think a lot of the time as a non-binary person, like I have pink hair, and even when I wear makeup, it's maybe a little bit less like naturalistic makeup. And, you know, this idea of professionalism is very, if you think of like professional woman and professional man, it actually becomes very gendered as you approach formal or professional. So weddings really are a tough spot for me too, because you're in the situation where to be formal, I would either wear a dress or a suit, but neither feel right. What feels right to me actually is maybe like a bustier top and a high-waisted trouser, which to others might look a little bit clubby. So anyway, this whole dysphoria around professionalism, and I wasn't walking around the world professional enough, but I felt like there was something fundamental that was coming into contact with that was really irking me and causing a lot of friction.
Yeah, because as a superficial species, I mean, I won't even blame America for being superficial, because obviously we're a vision-based species in a way. Mm-hmm. But people are under pressure to present an image.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're being told to present a professional image, and then you're being told to present a gendered image. Yeah,
I think that as I entered the adult world and there were more pressures to grow up, I started to question what that meant versus like who I am. What are people pressuring me to do that I should do that is growing up in development? And what are people pressuring me to do that is causing friction, and why? So I was in the grocery store one day and the words non-binary ballerina popped in my head, and I called my writer friend Anjali, and I was like, I think this idea has legs, like a short about a non-binary ballerina. She was like, I think it has legs too. And then I think I wrote the first, draft that night all in one swoop.
Is that Anjali who had a film with us?
No.
Last year? Okay.
Anjali Raghunathan, she works as a writer's assistant.
Got it.
Yeah, she worked on Love Life.
Oh, excellent. I love that show.
Mm-hmm. It's
wonderful
really
show.
Yeah. No, she's wonderful.
So non-binary ballerina popped in your head because, of course, talk about a paragon of gender and professionalism. I mean, there's no professional career that is more gender split.
Yes, exactly. And I really was drawn to this concept of somebody who felt like that, who literally had to choose a dance. There were two dances, and you can't achieve, which has also been a theme in my life, like how to achieve professionally if you don't choose a dance. And of course, in tennis too, there's women's tennis and men's tennis, which must have made me feel dysphoric too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You could probably, well, I was going to be lame and say you could probably kick ass on a lot of people on the guys' team.
Yeah, I mean,
I was actually on a co-ed tennis team in high school.
Oh, that's cool.
Our school was small enough.
Yeah, no, the question of non-binary people in sports is really interesting. I think it really, where my heart is on it is you just really got to ask the person what feels right to them. Like there are certain binary trans women, for example, who would feel very undermined by being in a third category because they're a woman. And I know a lot of trans women who can no longer open a pickle jar. So, like,
right, because the treatments.
Yeah. So it's sort of a misunderstanding of how the hormonal, in an unwillingness to go there in terms of how the hormonal treatment really works. Hormonal replacement therapy.
I'll break a rule and just be briefly political. I mean, there's just people whose professional assholes who pretend. And they tell Americans on TV at night that trans is just, there's just guys who are going to dress like women so they can get trophies.
It's propagated by
so
cis men
dumb.
getting cast as trans women in every representation we've ever seen. So of course you would see trans women as men in a dress.
Yeah, well,
Because
and
it's what we've literally
generally the Tucker Carlson crew they don't differentiate between transgender and what they grew up with, which, we had the old ugly term transvestism, right? And they just think, believe me, I won't go there, but
I think it's a lot of misunderstandings, medical, scientific misunderstandings. For example, one of the most oppressed communities in the United States are intersex people. There are people who are biologically neither male nor female, and a lot of the time in our country, the choice is made for them either by a doctor or by their parents at birth.
Yeah.
Robbing them of the identity that they were born with. So there is actually no biological certainty, and we all have our own hormonal cocktails. There are high T women. There are low T men. In fact, there are low T men who take testosterone to help, because their condition is seen as unnatural or an affect. They can take testosterone and after a certain period of time compete in sports.
Yeah.
Is that interesting?
You bring it up. There's the Olympian from Africa who got banned from the Olympics because naturally she's higher T than they want her to be.
Right.
And just some arbitrary line they drew that might even be borderline racist, but...
And I'm not quite sure what the answer is, because from my perspective, I think maybe I would have enjoyed a third category personally. But I know that a lot of trans women and trans men would not enjoy being placed in a third category. So it's highly individual and personal. These things are difficult because it sort of comes against the binary of winning and losing and the potential fallacy in the idea of fairness. We're all individually born with a different cocktail. And that's just facts.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for me, that third category that I would be interested in exploring might even go beyond winning and losing. Maybe the goals are different.
Interesting you say that, because as we were discussing it, I was thinking, we should just ban professional sports anyway. Most of them just cripple human beings.
Well, right.
You're generally crippled by 40.
Oh, yeah.
And
I'm pretty sure my sister has arthritis.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
And, and of course the contact sports are even worse. And it should all, let's just say if there were, if the NFL were 20 people on the sidelines working a video game controller and there were holograms running around on the field, all this gender stuff would be irrelevant, right? Because, I don't know.
No, I just think there's so many misunderstandings, and I think if everybody had a handful of trans friends, there would be a lot less of this hateful discourse. Because if you know trans women in your life, there's no way to know and love a trans woman without seeing her as a woman and understanding fully, like, who she is and her humanity. And I think these people get away with this hatred because they've never met somebody like that, and then they continue to not try to meet.
Haven't met nor seen.
Yeah.
Nor, yeah. When I deal with assholes who are anti-trans and they talk about pronoun wars and this and that, I go, let me tell you a story. Now I'm going to rob from Shannon's time and tell the story. At, I think it was Film Invasion in 2019, so pre-COVID, we had a trans woman, writer-director, and she wrote this beautiful film. I really love the film. Actually, it's in the Discovery Indie Film TV series, I believe. But of course, because I'm in my mid-50s, I can't name the title because I'm too old to remember 3 years ago. But
of course,
she was in the lobby, and our photographer, you probably met, same photographer who took pictures of you on the red carpet. She said, and by the way, this trans woman is like 6'3" and played college football. So, big woman. And our photographer said, oh, I love his boots. Because our photographer just thought this was a guy with like women's boots on.
Yeah.
And I said, and she turned and said, oh, thank you so much. And I said to the photographer, actually, this is and I said her name, and she said, "Oh, and he said, "Oh no, it's fine." And I said, "That's your pronoun war right there. Is someone used the wrong pronoun? The person said, 'Thank you for liking my boots,' and everyone was friends. Yeah, using the wrong pronoun was not the end of the world. No one got canceled or banned. It's just it's such a false narrative.
It creates an internal war in certain cisgendered folks, but I don't think much of that war is very literal, because it's a very cis-normative world perspective to even see somebody being misgendered as necessarily disrespectful, because you can't know somebody's gender seeing them. So you do have to ask, and sometimes cisgendered folks are like, well, it seems rude to ask. It's like, no, you can't know their gender until you ask. So it's actually about asking.
And you don't have to be afraid of what pronoun you use, because they'll just nicely let you know.
Yeah.
There is no...
So long as you're being nice about it. But if you get really mean about it suddenly, you're probably going to make some people uncomfortable. Yeah.
But the only people who have a problem with it are the people who've never met a trans person. So therefore they think it's this big imaginary battleground.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's not. There's no battleground. It's an imaginary problem. But that's because they just love to create straw men to burn them down.
Yeah, people also think there's a way to ask somebody curiously about their gender with positivity and openness, and there's another way to ask somebody about their gender in a way that seems to challenge it. And that's the line I think that also a lot of cisgendered folks can't see, saying, for example, but I look like a girl and I feel kind of fluid, but I'm still a girl. That's not curiosity. That's putting me on defense. Versus, oh, that's interesting, you're non-binary. I haven't met anyone who's non-binary before. What pronouns should I use for you? And how do you feel about the word girl? It's different. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, so we got really far away from my own. So you thought that drama would play better on the festival circuit, or really when this topic, when the non-binary ballerina came to you, it obviously was a better story for drama than you wouldn't want to have fun with this person's story.
It felt like a serious story. I also was, I began working as an assistant to an executive producer who was working in the Sundance narrative drama for social cause and documentary space. And I wanted something that would perhaps interest her too.
Right. So you were aware of what the premier film festivals of this planet were about.
And I had been exposed to examples in the drama for social cause category, so I could clearly see how this piece could have a run.
For sure. So you wrote it, and then you went about the heavy lifting of getting it to screen. Yeah. We hired a director. I got some help. I was put in touch with some wonderful folks at Sundance through my boss, Nancy Stevens, who is a supporter of Sundance Institute. And they set me up with a wonderful director who also happens to be non-binary, Courtney Hope Therond, who was wonderful. And you weren't interested in directing it yourself at that point. It felt like too much, especially with you knew you were going to play the lead.
So I like to write and act together because it feels like embodiment. It's so personal, both of those things. And also it's clear where one ends and the other begins. I have trouble going back and forth. I don't know that I couldn't, but it's not pleasant for me going back and forth between inhabiting a story and seeing the whole story and then inhabiting and seeing it again. So I could direct and costume the same story because that's all about zoomed out character focus. And I could write and act in the same story, but I don't tend to direct and act in the same story.
Right. And you can write and direct as long as you're not acting.
I could. I haven't done that before, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I tend to like to act in it.
Good for you. You know,
because we got to remember that little kid with the Britney Spears song who had Moxie.
True.
I got to go and do that.
You are a natural performer.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, too, because my own ends with a chaotic dance sequence that was choreographed, but I helped choreograph it. It was sort of a devised situation that I worked on with this wonderful woman named Becca Marcus.
And was it a fun process of writing and then bringing it to screen? It sounds like it was all positive.
Yeah, so we crowdfunded for the project, and the day after we finished the crowdfunding campaign and got our funding, the pandemic hit. Which honestly, it was like,
so
money's
in
the bank.
So it was
no
March 15th, March whatever, 2020.
Yeah. And then we were shooting it by that summer.
Right. So you just created a bubble to shoot it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we wore masks and we had testing and we created a bubble before bubble creation was as well
was
understood.
Was it union? I mean, because honestly, like...
No, it wasn't union.
Yeah, because I mean, a bunch of people in their 20s, especially early COVID, I mean, your generation was pretty much didn't have a lot to worry about with that first strain, at least.
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely worried, but I think that we had a pretty safe set and everybody was on the same boat about wearing masks and things like that. But it was definitely a little nerve-wracking. It was one of the first major things I went out into the world to do. Yeah,
because you have a lot of people on screen too. It wasn't, look, a lot of films shot in the summer of 2020 was. There were Zoom films we saw at the festival, and some were good, and there were not many, and there was a lot of really lovely little family films where it was like mom, dad, and two kids all playing the roles and taking turns holding the camera and stuff. Like there was a lot of stuff like that, but My Own actually doesn't look like it was shot during lockdown.
Yeah, no, we had an excellent producer, Allison Powell, who just made it happen. It was during the time where people felt that it was being spread via touch too, so we all had individualized lunch packs.
You were wiping surfaces.
We were wiping surfaces and doing all the extra. Yeah, it's funny. I sometimes think about that. We would get a lunch and snack pack for the whole day that was filled to the brim, but it was no sharing. Yeah, well, and of course, you still wouldn't share today, but the whole lunch pack of it all.
But you could share with that dancer who you happen to live with.
Right. Yeah. And we got ballet consultation help, and the pandemic helped us out in that way too. I had gone to high school with a couple of kids who had a ballet family in the same way that I had a tennis family, who would miss half of school days and who were probably not going to college or going straight into the ballet world. And so when we were getting down to producing it, I reached out to my friend Eric Thordal Christensen, who was a ballet dancer, just ate, slept, breathed it, and and he put me in touch with his sister Helena, who became Katrina, who's the featured ballet dancer in the piece. And she both played the role of my feet, because I'm not a ballet dancer. She choreographed all the ballet sections. And she consulted on the writing to make sure that nothing I said was idiotic.
You need that.
Yeah, you need that.
Yeah, when you're not an expert.
Good to be humble. Yeah.
You're a technical advisor.
Yeah. And then we got hooked up with this ballet studio. I don't know where it was. It might have been in the valley somewhere. And they gave us 3 of their ballet dancers to be used as extras and the space, which we had to have a particular space to be able to use the point shoes.
Yeah. And you, was it a quick shoot?
Yeah, pretty quick. 3 days.
Yeah, that's quick.
Yeah. I'm in the indie film world, I'm quick is one, but...
Quick is one, but I mean, you have...
But I had multiple
locations.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, the stuff at the ballet scenes, I mean, you can't do that quickly.
Right, exactly.
Well, not well.
Yeah, exactly. To do these sort of surreal dance sequences, we had to have some time and some space to calibrate and potentially mess up.
I have to say, besides winning the Programmer's Prize, I mean, so now that I know your whole story, it's I find it impressive that your film is so wonderfully visual because, because sketch just trains you to be clever with language.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely been a shift in my writing as I focused more in film is the push to be more visual than cerebral. Because I think also just as a person, I'm very cerebral. Like I can get caught. I have a lot of thoughts, as you may have noticed. And I can get caught in that loop of like, I'm just going to tell everyone my thoughts. But I do think sketch kind of pushed me to be a little bit more visual because I started to notice that, for example, shorter sketches did better. More physical sketches did better. If I had a really...
Costuming is visual.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's the way in which I started to be visual. And even when I work as a director, I come at it a lot from a design perspective. I'm not the most technical director. My background is in design and working with actors. So I have a lot to say about the design and the world and building out the world and the writing and the acting. And then in terms of the nitty gritty of the technical, the lighting, the gaffing, I tend to be like, can you show me a few options? Yeah. So, just learning my strengths and weaknesses, which has just come from doing the damn thing.
Yeah. And did you hold the film for, like, when you locked picture and it was done, did you hold it till after the pandemic to hit the festival circuit?
No, we started, I think by that next summer we were submitting. Yeah, and, nobody talks about it, but the festival circuit's a bloodbath and absolute batting practice. So it really actually taught me a lot about, I think I had created this belief, this religion in my head that if I didn't get one thing, that was a sign that I couldn't get other things or that I should stop or something. But really seeing how I could be rejected from 10 in a row, but then get into an Academy Award qualifying festival, I'm like, damn, I should be auditioning more. I should be going out for grants and not expecting to get anything. But if you do enough, it does come through.
No rhyme or reason.
Yeah.
No, and I think, I can't remember who I'm quoting, but I think the quote is, no one knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
I mean, we know what we're doing at the Sherman Oaks Film Festival and Film Beige in LA because we just care about quality film. But I can tell you, as a festival programmer, we just show the best films that are submitted, and then I'll see films that we didn't accept in other nearby festivals.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, so what's going on there? I can assure you they're not good. And if they turned you down and took that, then what's going on with them? What are their I don't understand the criteria.
Yeah, no, but there's no right. It's like a chaotic, crazy universe. But it really realizing that about the festival circuit and to know that I could have so much success with this film, which I have, and also have so much rejection and it be a bloodbath of rejection at the same time has really challenged that sports framework I grew up with that was either win or lose.
Right. Because in a tennis tournament,
if you lose in the first round, you're done. And I still had that mentality. I remember, I think I auditioned for one film thing when I was 16. And admittedly, I did a terrible job. But of course I did because I'd never auditioned for a film thing before. And I never went again because I think I thought it was a tournament and I had been removed from the first round. And now I audition 4 times a week. I have a folder in my albums on my phone, and it's called batting practice. And I only worry if I don't get something one every 50 videos. And so far, I haven't worried. Right,
because those are self-tapes, as they call it. Even though there's no such thing as tape anymore.
Yes.
Yeah, because you now you have to... Boy, the casting process has completely removed the work from themselves.
Oh my God. It's I'm my own DP and my own director. I'm giving myself notes.
Yeah. It's no longer standing in a room and they, it's crazy. It's crazy.
I realized at a certain point auditioning to the amount that I wanted to be auditioning to give it a real college try would require way too much from my boyfriend as a reading partner. So I have absolutely nailed the art of getting him to voice record the lines and then adding them in post.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
That's cool. And but by the way, I'm so glad you realized that it's batting practice.
Yeah.
Because it really is. And the sports analogy, it's such a whatever. You're the kind of person you make people share with you, right? So my first tennis tournament as a kid, I lost in the first round. And then the kid that won the whole thing, and he came over to me at the end and said, You're the best person I played in this tournament. But I was knocked out first out of like 5 rounds. So as far as I knew, I was the biggest loser.
Right. Yeah.
And then this dude is telling me, actually, everyone else was easier to beat than you. It's too bad we faced each other the first round. You know?
Right. So, it isn't as black and white as sports makes it out to be.
Yeah. And as the casting process, right, there's callbacks and there's repeats and things. Yeah, you just can't. And, sadly, you can't let anything bother you.
I've been writing stuff, and then I submit it to a number of grants, and I expect it to be a no, and I just keep shooting it out. Like, it's literally no reflection on the quality. In fact, you literally never get feedback on any of this stuff. You're lucky if they send you a rejection email. They almost never do. So I literally call it shooting stuff into the void.
It totally is. So it's a black hole. Yeah.
It's just, and it's only worth it if you enjoy the process enough, and I do. I'm like, well, it was fun to make this tape. Into the black hole it goes.
That's you're doing exactly what I always counsel people to do. I'm like, do it if you enjoy it.
Yeah.
Because if you're doing it solely for the reward,
it will probably destroy you.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I feel like I've seen it destroy people already.
Yeah, no, because it's otherwise, yeah, it's one of the more emotionally abusive businesses human beings have created.
Yeah.
The most corporate structures aren't too friendly, but yeah, they don't.
It's true.
But it's not like, when they let go of an accountant, it's not like you have no worth.
Yeah.
Although it does hurt people to get fired, I guess.
Yeah. No, but it's very, very personal and vulnerable, the way you're putting yourself. And to vulnerably send yourself into a black hole is a special kind of psycho.
Well, and they're looking at video of you presenting yourself in what I assume you felt like, well, I've done the best I can.
Yeah, I get pre-mad sometimes. Like if I really like a tape, I'll send it into the black hole, and I will be actually pre-mad at whoever I know isn't going to cast me.
Right.
I'm like, I believe in this for me. But you have to. It's weird. You have to believe in it for you well enough to give the best performance or write the best piece of work or write the best application, and then you send it into a black hole.
And so for you now, are you a Renaissance person? Are you equally focused on auditioning for acting roles and writing stuff and gearing up to direct or produce again?
Yeah, ultimately, I kind of want to be the top bitch in charge. Like, I want to be a showrunner. So I see myself as somebody who creates an idea, understands every department, and kind of delegates and does whatever the fuck they want. So, like, maybe star in it and direct a few episodes, maybe even style some episodes.
Right, because, I mean, in a way, well, maybe I'm antiquated, but showrunner kind of also means head writer in a lot of ways, right? So the person who's the creative foundation.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm really inspired by people like Rachel Bloom and Issa Rae. Women, female presenting people who create very unique perspectives that only they could write, and then embody it on, like, kind of have the gall to be like, and I'm the one, and then you go out on screen and you do it. I do think I have a very unique perspective, and I heard recently, it was a quote or a mantra or something that was like, when you're thinking about why it's worth it, it's important to ask yourself, like, what matters to me more? Like, what is outweighing what? And it could be valid either way. The fear of failing or your sense of mission and purpose. And I think I have a very clear sense of mission and purpose. And I truly think it's important for me to get my dreams, because I think that my voice needs to be heard, and I have a big sense of mission about it.
I agree, actually. As a fan of your work, I would agree that your perspective is important and fresh and needed.
Yeah, so I've been applying to director mentorship programs, grants. I've been tossing my writing out to some competitions. I have been auditioning like a motherfucker, and I also think there's a lot of pressure in this industry to pick a lane. And I'm like, excuse me, I am not making enough money in any one of these categories to have the gall to tell you what my lane is yet. Like, they can tell me financially one day what my lane should be. Like,
well, and
I'm just going to keep throwing paint at the wall until something sticks.
Fuck yes. And not to mention, like, what lane did Taika Waititi choose?
Right, exactly. The coolest people don't choose a lane.
Yeah. and it's totally unnecessary because it is, there's so many aspects to it.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's what I want to do.
And you'd mentioned a pilot, right?
Yeah, I have a pilot that I co-wrote with Tiffany Kim Stevens and got picked up by West 36 Productions, just a tiny little production house, but didn't have to crowdfund. That was pretty magical. And I co-wrote a web series pilot, so like 12 pages, 11 minutes, where I play the LA County Grim Reaper in the space between life and death during a big wave of COVID.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. So, yeah.
I like it. So back to comedy, dark comedy.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's that, I think where I really want to land, I have both voices in me, and I think where I really want to land is dramedy. My favorite movie of all time is Juno. And I don't think it's, I don't think it's a coincidence that, actually in my first acting class ever, they were going around telling everybody who their comps were. I was told I had the Elliot Page appeal. And actually at the time I was like, I really wanted them to say Jennifer Lawrence, and they said Elliot Page. And I was like, damn it. But now I like totally know why. Cause like the way that they performed was queer as fuck and trans as fuck. And the comedy of that piece centered on, in retrospect, clearly the comedy of a trans person going through an experience of womanhood. And I would like to do roles like that and post coming out.
I hope, yeah. I hope to see them.
And write things like that, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you the Grim Reaper thing? Is there any? Is there?
It's funny. Yeah.
Does any of the gender stuff come into it, or you just went for it with a story about I'm a genderless death character? Because death, I'm just going to tell everyone who pictures the Grim Reaper holding the scythe, if you assign a gender to that figure from myth,
yeah,
then you're just being biased.
So we wrote my character as cis. We decided early on that she used she, her pronouns. We also have a character called the COVID monster who we use they, them pronouns for the whole time, and we're gender open during casting. We use they, them pronouns for the vaccine monster as well. So in that project, it wasn't really about gender, but as a writer who had come out, I was done with deciding before I knew what the location was, whether a character had tits or not.
Fair enough.
Like, this librarian can't picture the library yet, but I'm seeing tits. Like, what is that? What is that, people? Like, so I think I just wrote that script. We wrote that script with a lot of openness to the idea that any gender and all genders could perform certain roles. But we actually wrote my character who has a tough relationship with her mom in the piece. We wanted it to be a specific maternal-daughter relationship as cisgendered. So I would say that I was gender conscious in my writing of that. And now I'm pitching a feature that I don't want to spoil because then somebody could steal it, but it takes on transness and queerness in the evangelical church. It's a dramedy and finds unexpected and humorous common ground.
Well, excellent. Yeah, and it's funny. My era, like, they invented the word dramedy, I think somewhere around sometime in the 80s. When like 30-something came out, or 30. But I mean, it's just storytelling.
Yeah.
Like Shakespeare is technically dramedy. Every Shakespeare drama has comedy, and every Shakespeare comedy has dramatic elements. Like, it's actually storytelling. I definitely agree.
I think that very few things that happen in life are not funny at all. And actually, if you make like a whole film in certain contexts where nothing funny happens, it becomes laughably unrealistic. because, death is funny. Like people losing loved ones. There are humorous moments. There are my moments of light.
Yes. I say yes as someone who's
Yeah.
been losing too many people lately, but yes.
Yes.
And Death at a Funeral is one of the funniest films ever made. So
Yeah.
hey.
And I think it can be, I think that comedy is an important tool. I truly feel like it can bridge the gap between different viewpoints in a country that's very polarized, because I think when both people laugh, they find something in common. So if you can find, like when somebody laughs, it's because they understand. So if you can find something that both kinds of people will laugh at, they get closer and closer together.
And I'm just going to add my own, I'm going to hop on my soapbox for a moment and say that Shannon nailed it. Life is very short. We do die. Everyone's going to die. And do you really want to spend your brief time here being angry and trying to enforce rules on other people?
Yeah.
Like life is really, really short.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that when you try to teach somebody something in a totally stern, serious way, they're going to feel like it's school and you're going to lose them.
Yes. Yes. Going after strangers on Facebook ain't going to win anyone over.
Never.
You actually have to embrace people.
But as I was talking to about before, I have a strange cult following of Jackass Bros now who I love dearly. And I did an Ask Me Anything recently, and they had some questions about my gender. And I taught to the best of my ability with good humor. And one of my favorite responses to the Ask Me Anything was, regardless of what gender you are, you're hot as fuck, flat out. And I was like, this is the energy. This is the unity. It's silly as fuck, but that is a moment of profound unity. This is a person who didn't think that there were more genders than two, who now is like, if you're another one, I don't care, you're hot. Like, that's funny as fuck, and it's working.
And you brought us back to Jackass. All right. So was that standard casting call? Did you?
No. So my sister had been approached.
Oh, they approached your sister to nail them.
Yes, and she went through the whole process, and I was going to come to set with her, so I had COVID tested as well. I think this must have been like October 2020 or something. So sets were just sort of coming back in the studio system, and I was going to come to set with my sister. I had COVID tested. I was all good to go. My sister, who wants to go into politics, had never seen a Jackass movie before and had no idea what she was getting into. So the night before, she watched her first Jackass film and did not want to do it. And so she had her agent call the people and, respectfully asked that she drop it. But I knew that the Jackass people were in a crunch, and they had planned a day around somebody being able to hit 100-mile-per-hour tennis serves into their junk. And I have hardly any tennis credits to my name, but I was capable. I was a person who could do that. So I started sending them my headshots and videos of me playing tennis, and they gave me a shot, and I did it.
And honestly, not to be competitive with a sibling, as a younger sibling myself, but you were probably way better because you're also a performer.
Right, I'm aware of
you're someone who's on camera.
Yeah, I'm aware of a camera. I will say I made jokes about how small the targets were that were taken out because they wanted to be the jokesters. I get it. But, I actually felt like with my sketch comedy background, with my bro-y feminism, I felt like everything in my life was leading up to my ability to do this task.
Yeah, it actually does bring everything together. Go figure. The odds that tennis came into your acting career.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's like one tennis movie per decade in a way.
Yeah.
And the last one I think was done by Woody Allen, so now we can't look at it again.
We got King Richard, but it's too triggering, remember?
Yeah, I didn't see it either.
Yeah, it's just too much for me. I think I wonder if the movie might have glamorized things that might have been a little darker. That's just something I wonder, and so I'm not going there.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
All right, well, hey, this has been wonderful. And I think we set a record.
Oh
Your
my
life
God.
was too darn interesting.
Oh no.
No, it's not. It's a good thing.
No, how long's it been?
It's the more you say, the better.
Okay.
But I think I'm going to wrap up. But
Yeah.
before I wrap up, and I didn't warn you on this, but I always say, is there a website or social media handle you want people who are like, wow, I want to follow Shannon? You got stuff like that?
Yeah, follow me on Instagram at Shannon Gibbsy, ShannonGibbsy. And
Yeah,
I'll have all my social media updates about I keep people very up to date on my stories. I get very bored.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, actually, that's how I learned you were in Jackass, was from your Instagram.
Exactly. No, it's like a thing in my friend group. Like, Greg will try to tell anybody anything about their lives, and they're like, oh, yeah, I saw Shannon's Instagram story. I'm like, I'm so embarrassing.
Well, for me, it was meaningful because while I was busy with the film festival, my partner watched it without me, and I'm the bigger Jackass fan. And so now I've got to like push her to watch it again with me because I'm like, what can I say? I think it's. I also think the Eric Andre show is like perfect performance art. So I'm a little weird.
It is very performance art. And I was very proud that, I mean, they didn't make it up. I got them all to the ground very quickly.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, it was very fun.
Hey, you know what? It is also them and whatever. They're silly dudes.
Yeah.
But there's a feminist thing to that too.
Yeah, there was a lot of gender humor in it too. And
Yeah.
I think that when people find me on Instagram after watching that, I love to just like flip it on its head and gender fuck them about it and be like, yeah, funny that Chris Pontius was a dress. Also funny I was in a dress. I guess that's two people in drag.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, now you're making me realize, I don't know, maybe they have incorporated women. I don't know. Because I know there's women who do parkour and women who do like crazy, stupid stunts.
I think they were a skateboard crew. And
They
it was
were.
just
They started skateboard and
friend
surfer.
group.
Yeah.
And, you know, brotherhood versus sisterhood stuff.
Yeah.
I think I could have fit in.
I think so.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully they'll call you in for
Yeah.
for
And
Jackass
this is
5.
my pitch.
And then you'll be like, wait, no, I don't want to get hurt.
Exactly, just like Eric.
I don't want to get. You can't damage me when I gotta go on other
Eric
auditions.
was right in the sweet spot. They're like, who are you about to hit? I'm like, Eric is where I hit serves. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Shannon Gibbsy at Shannon Gibbsy on Instagram, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm gonna go on my rambling closer for everything people should check out, because if you want to see my own, and I intentionally didn't say things about it that would be spoilery.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want to watch that wonderful short film, at some point you can go to Amazon Prime Video on a big TV. Don't watch movies on your phone.
No.
And go to Discover Indie, search for Discover Indie Film, and watch all 6 seasons, because it's going to be in season 6. So look for my own in there. And if you want to learn about the Sherman Oaks Film Festival that had the LA premiere of my own, you go to ShermanOaksFF.com, and it's or at Sherman Oaks FF on social media. Look, I'm rusty because I didn't even mention Discover Indie Film is discoverindiefilm.com, and it's at DIF Wins on social media, because
Perfect.
we had to change the name, and DIF won, so DIF Wins. And there is a sister festival that Shannon was on the filmmakers board and selected films, selected award winners. And that's Film Invasion Los Angeles that we have every June. And that's filminvasionla.com. And it's at filminvasionla on social media. And I think we're done.
Awesome. Yeah, check out local indie films at film festivals. Would suggest.
For real. If you have a hard, I think we all have a hard time finding, like, everyone asks each other all the time, what are you watching? So that we can watch something good tonight on Netflix or HBO Max, which is my favorite. And I don't know why I always promote Netflix, but because it's the 800-pound gorilla.
It's the standard. Yeah.
It is, but watching stuff made by people who are financing it themselves or crowdfunding it, and they're making stuff from their hearts, it's so much better than
Get that fresh shit.
Yeah, because it's someone's perspective. It's a point of view, and it hasn't gone through a boardroom.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not compromised. So anyway, thank you, Shannon, for coming over and recording this. And thank you, everyone, for listening.
Bye.